Hello, my name is Michael Lee, and I am part of the source code group. And today I'm going to talk about design exploration and potentially a direction of how we're going to do editing of each of the individual rules, and mainly moving away from modals and moving towards a drawer component. So if you've ever edited protected branches before, we have something like this. And inside each of these drop downs, there's actually three things you can select when you're dealing with trying to set push and merge. You can select users, groups, and deploy keys, and select roles all within one drop down. Talk about a drop down that works hard. And it's really hard to see your selected states by putting everything into a drop down. And we have this opportunity to revisit how we handle this and eventually think about, what's a better way to do it. So initially I pulled out one thing here is the roles, and here we can have a checkbox to allow you to select whatever roles you want, and essentially separating that out from users, groups, and deploy keys. This drop down or search behaves very similar to this drop down. It's a search that search all three groups. It's really powerful because you just go to one place to select whatever you want, and then at the end, whatever selected shows up on a list. Yep, that's a little bit more clear than this, but after a design review with Andy, he posed the question, is there another interaction pattern that we could use here to make this even easier? And that's where we come into drawers. So with drawers, drawers allow us to provide contextual information also while keeping the main object in view. So here is our editing experience, but also the main object is in view. So unlike a modal, it doesn't block, so you can actually scroll and look around. So as I'm editing this rule for allow to push and merge, I can actually check to see, as I change, if I'm happy with it, then I can save changes. If I don't, I can click cancel. And you can't do that with a modal. But if you looked at this design here, and you're going to weigh it against a modal, so if I put them side by side just like this, the benefits aren't really there, right? So, to display your information like this or like this, it's same. It doesn't really matter. But what can we do here to make it count that we are moving towards drawers? And that is actually splitting up users, groups, and deploy keys into their own separate areas. So separating them out, we get it looking like this. And this means that when you go to edit, you can edit roles, users, groups, and deploy keys all independently of one another. The context for searching users is just limited to users. And if you want to add groups, you go down to here to add groups. The split between these three is a much better execution of what I proposed maybe from a design earlier this year, where I had separate edit buttons for each of these things. And I felt this would open up a modal that allows you just to select groups, but that's very slow compared to the existing experience where you can do everything all in one go. Using the drawer actually allows you to press one button, the edit button on allow to push and merge, and allows you to edit all these things all in one go. And once you're happy with everything, you can click Save Changes. So that's definitely an iteration. Played around with different displays of names and groups and things like that. But I think what we can do is settle back into using the GL card, which we're using all over the place now for settings. And if we use that pattern again here, we have a uniform look. You search and add by users. And if you look at side by side here, I think it just groups everything nicely into little blocks, and I think that works for me. Um, and if we look at that, compare the drawer approach with the modal, I feel like it's a much more clear what you have selected. You can see the users, there's two of them. These are the people, the groups, and the deploy keys. And no longer do you have to do, you need to investigate, oh, this is a square picture, so that means that's a group. Oh, this is a circle, so this must be a user. There's none of that anymore. Everything is just grouped neatly in their independent list. So that's definitely a move towards drawers over modals here. I think one pet peeve of mine with protected branches has always been like, how do you set up your branch so that everyone needs to submit a merge request for changes on a protected branch? This comes up often. And the way you do it right now is that you need to know that you need to select allow push and merge to no one, and then allow to merge is whoever whoever you want to give the role of merging to. It could be team leads. In this example here is developers and maintainers. But if I was just looking at the protected branch, it's so confusing and unclear of how I would set that up. So one thing I've added in the previous designs was I had this text down in this area here, but the problem with this execution is that it's an action and I'm using a link for an action, and that doesn't really align with what we need it to do, because it should be a button, to be honest. But if we were going to make it a setting, that could make things a little bit more interesting here. So if I rephrase that and make that a form element and make that the first one, so here, if you want everyone to require a merge request for all changes, this means that no one will have push access. What that eventually does is if you toggle it on, you see that, oh, okay, no, this whole area disappears or is hidden visibly. And because it's in a drawer, you can compare and contrast with what it is currently, and you can say, oh, okay, right now I have these three roles, one group, 4 users, and a deploy key. If I set this up, nobody's allowed to push, and I might need to notify these people. But I can take a look at both contexts before and after, before making my decision to save changes, or just cancel out to revert back to my previous state. If I click Save Changes, then I get this empty state. Everyone's required to submit a merge request for changes. And I think that's interesting flow. And, if we're going to do it in one place, we might as well do it everywhere else. Another place where we have rules is in the approval rules themselves, where you can click edit on them. And this is what it looks like on the right currently. We have the name, the target branch, but in the world of branch rules, the context of the branch is already established. So in this scenario, we wouldn't have target branch, but we would have rule name, approvals required, and the add approvers. Here we can see that same kind of combination of combining users and groups into one, and this is how it could look if you separated those two concepts out into their independent lists. And yeah, side by side, personally I feel like this is a much more clear way to approach editing, because everything's in its independent lists. But I'm happy to hear your feedback on this, and yeah, if there's no real blockers, I would like to move forward with this design. And because it's in the scope of branch rules, I feel like we can work on this independent of existing protected branches and merge request approvals. And over time, if we are happy and confident, then we can move everything over to branch rules. Thank you very much.